2020 is nearly over.
Thank goodness.
Now it's time to set your budget for 2021 and let's make it frugal. Hi, I'm Hope.
And I'm Larry.
From Under the Median. If you're unfamiliar with us, we raised our 4 sons debt-free, including paying cash for our home when at the time our income averaged under $40,000 a year. Every week on our channel, we talk to you about being frugal. Now, every year when it gets near the end of December, Larry and I begin automatically talking and thinking about setting our budget for the upcoming year. In this case, it's the year 2021, and we want to give you some tips and strategies, not only for how to set your budget up for next year, but how to make sure that that budget is a frugal budget. The first thing that you need to do is make sure that you have some method of figuring out exactly what happened in 2020. And I know most of us are just kind of doing a hallelujah because the whole 2020 thing is over. But you really do need to take a long, hard look at what happened to your finances in the last 12 months. So we are running on the assumption that you actually have a written budget.
That's the start.
So if you don't have a written budget, we suggest that you gather your last 3 or 4 months of bank statements. Make sure you know like how much your income was and how much you spent. And basically you should be able to look at those expenses that come in on the bank statement and figure out where your money went. We have all of our budget in categories, so that makes it really easy at the end of the year to look at exactly what we spent in every single category of our budget. Now, as we go through this video, we are actually going to show you real life examples from our personal budget to show you exactly how we work through this process. Now, when you've got the sheet in front of you that tells you exactly what you spent in 2020, you need to ask yourself a series of questions about the cold, hard facts that are right now staring you in the face.
So the first question that you want to ask yourself is, am I happy with these numbers?
Now, there are going to be some numbers on that sheet that you do a hallelujah dance, all right? Because if you came in way under budget in some areas, those are the areas that make you super happy. But I guarantee you, after over 30 years of budgeting, there are going to be some areas of your budget that make you cringe just a little bit.
And we say that out of our own personal experience.
Absolutely, and we're going to show you from our own personal experience in just a few minutes.
The next item is, how do these items affect my goals?
So you should always have a list of written goals. Our video next Monday is actually going to completely be centered around goals. We're going to share with you the 3 kinds of goals there are and why everybody needs to have those 3 kinds of goals. And once again, next Monday, we're going to show you written examples from our goal sheet to show you how to implement this in your own life. And so if you are not a subscriber, be sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell button to make sure that you're aware when we drop that video next Monday so you don't miss a thing.
The next thing you want to do is check your progress on your goals. How are you doing?
Now, there are 2 kinds of goals that you probably have. There may be goals on paying down debt, and there may be goals on savings for future things that you're going to want or need. You actually should be tracking your progress on both of those kinds of goals every single year.
The next thing you might want to ask yourself are these numbers an anomaly? Now, what is an anomaly? It's not a word we use every day, although Hope and I use it quite a bit.
An anomaly is something that doesn't happen every day. It's an exception to the rule. So let us give you a really quick example from our own personal life. We went way over on our grocery budget this year. And a lot of that had to do with the fact of the way we had to shop during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we immediately looked at that number staring at us on the piece of paper and said, that is an anomaly. So if the totals you're looking at in specific budget categories are really high, just because of the nature of how crazy 2020 was, you need to ask yourself, is this just because 2020 happened?
Yeah, so we're talking about something unusual and not something typical. The next thing you want to look at is, can I change these numbers? You want to look at the numbers and say, what caused these numbers to be so high? And how can I lower them? And you might want to raise some numbers in some categories that aren't working. It might be that the costs have just gone up and you're going to have to adjust those. So there's always adjustments that need to be made. If you're making a little more money and you've had a raise, you might want to distribute that throughout your budget.
And one of the things that Larry and I always talk about when we have conversations at home about our budget is that it's always a balancing act. So when you add money to one budget category, often you find yourself going back through and having to reduce the expenditures in another budget category. That's just the nature of budgeting. Don't let it throw you off. It's a balancing act. Now, there are some numbers that you're not going to be able to change. If your mortgage payment is $1,500 a month, guess what? It's still going to be $1,500 a month. You can't change that. But there are a number of budget categories that you do have a degree of control over that you can change and you can reduce. Planning a budget for 2021 is the next step. After you've looked at the mess that 2020 made of your budget numbers, it's time to go ahead and figure out what you're going to do with those numbers for 2021. What are you going to change? What are you going to raise? What are you going to lower? And what can you possibly eliminate?
One of the items that we like to, I guess it's a term that we like to use, is frugalizing your budget.
And yes, we made up that word. You can use it though, because it's the only word we could make up that sort of explained what we do with our budget. We frugalize it. Now, what is the difference between a just regular old run-of-the-mill budget and a frugalized budget? Here is the difference. In a frugalized budget, any budget category that has changed at all from one year to the next year comes with a series of steps that we're going to explain to you right now that will help make sure that the changes that you want to implement actually take place. So when you frugalize a budget, it's almost like having a list of mini goals that are all associated with that one budget category. Now, we're actually going to take you into the back end of our personal budget and show you some of the categories that we needed to make changes to.
Or that we could make changes to.
That's right.
That we had some freedom to work with the numbers. So, Hope, let's go through our 2021 projected budget and discuss the different categories here.
Whenever we are looking at setting our budget for the new year, we actually have a sheet in front of me. I have done this for decades. I've actually prepared a sheet that is a budget analysis that shows every budget category, what we had projected to spend monthly throughout the whole year, and what we actually spent. So I can see right in front of us, we can see how it actually worked out. Now, what you're seeing in front of you now is not our entire budget. These are the categories that I thought would be most interesting to you because we've had some questions on how we budget for some things and how much money is in some of those categories. So I went ahead and put those categories down on this projection sheet so that you could see them.
So this sheet is showing what we actually did in 2020. Is that right?
That's right. And then in the far column, I have a comment section. Though that comment section is that critical part that tells us how we're going to change each of these categories for our 2021 budget. Now, anything that is a sinking fund, you'll see is marked, and I'm super big on color coding.
Now, when you say sinking fund, I'm not sure everybody understands that. I keep thinking, I get this visualization of the Titanic, and that's not a positive thing. I mean, I don't associate sinking with something that I want to be a part of.
Sometimes the word Titanic does describe our budget. I'm sorry, but in this case, it's a good thing. All right. So the sinking funds are marked there. They're highlighted in orange. A sinking fund is something that we have saved up the total amount in that budget category 12 months in advance. So for instance, if you look at home maintenance, we start in January with that full $1,800 in the bank and ready to spend. So sinking, Larry, is referring to the fact that you start with it completely full and then you spend it down as the year progresses and the total amount available sinks.
So we've saved up that money.
That is correct.
In the previous year, and that is now available to us.
That's right. Okay, so home maintenance, the general rule of thumb, if you look at what experts recommend, is that you save 1% of the total value of your home and set that aside every year to apply to home maintenance. Now, our home is worth about $150,000. And so $1,500 would be 1% of that. We actually set aside a little bit more than that every year. We set aside $1,800. Now, we actually came in at about $1,500 in 2020, but we're not changing the amount we're setting aside because we feel really comfortable knowing that that little bit of extra money is there for home maintenance. Anything that I have concerns about when I present this document to Larry, I have highlighted in yellow. So that's like a caution color, so he knows by looking at it. In fact, before we start our end of the year budget meeting, he actually asks to see this sheet so he can see how much yellow is on it. Because he's like, show me the yellow.
I want to know what I'm up against.
That's right. So he wants to know how many categories I'm going to suggest that we make some changes to. So actually this year it wasn't too bad. One of the other categories that I just want to point out the areas that we are having to make some changes in, and you're welcome to pause the tape and look at the whole budget if you like. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them in the comment section for the video. In case you're wondering, our cell phone bill, I pay monthly. I do not have a contract. I pay monthly. And okay, hold on to your hats. Until 3 years ago, we actually did not own a cell phone. I did not have a cell phone. If you're wondering about internet, we have high-speed internet from ITV3. It's $50 a month for the internet, and also there is a phone line, a home phone line, landline that comes with that package. There are just a couple other areas in our budget that we had some concerns with, and we felt like we really needed to sort of work through and address it with one another. One of those was food. As I mentioned, our budget, and many of you have asked, our budget when we had a family of 6 at home was $375 a month for food. This year we actually went over that. It came out right almost exactly at $400 a month. Now, part of that is just because of the nature of the way that we felt like we needed to grocery shop during the height of the COVID pandemic.
We couldn't go to all the stores that we are used to doing that would have brought that figure down. We had to stick with just one store that brought the food out to the car, and that was more expensive.
So that was an example of where that is an anomaly. However, you'll see on the budget, I'm actually going to lower the food budget from $375 a month to $300 a month because our 2 oldest boys moved out and now we're just a family of 4. When everything was said and done, we had 4 areas of our budget that we wanted to hone in on and try to lower for the year 2021. Now, this is where frugalizing your budget comes into play.
So, Hope, let's move on to the Frugal Budget Goals worksheet.
That's right. Now, when we frugalize a budget, here's what we want you to understand. Your budget is a spending plan. It's subject to change. If something you're doing in that budget is not working, you need to change it. But the question is, how do you know if it's working? You have to be tracking that budget every single month. in any category where you have a goal, a stated goal to lower that amount, you need to treat it just exactly like it was a written goal. Why do we meet goals? Because they're written down. Something happens in our brain when we actually write something down and stick it in front of our face.
Yeah, it's more concrete.
So when we frugalize our budget, we take each of those areas that we're making changes to for the next 12 months, and we write down what the goal is and how we are going to achieve the goal.
Let's go through our utility bill briefly and explain what happened when we were looking at we have Amaron, that is our utility. There's so many others, Commonwealth, Edison, whatever you might have. But they sent us a projection based on our current use on what they feel our January bill is going to be. And how much was that, Hope?
$195.
Which isn't horrible. I mean, we have a 1,200 square foot home, and that's not a terrible bill for a January. January is pretty cold. You can expect a higher bill. We used to have, what did we have? Almost $300 on some of our bills at our older house. It wasn't as well insulated as this one is. So what we've decided to do is we're going to try to reduce that. We're going to try to beat the system, in other words. So we came up with some ideas on what we could do to reduce that bill.
So your first suggestion was?
To lower the thermostat by 1 degree.
Okay, now in his defense, he did say let's lower it by 1 degree. But y'all, we have it set at 65 degrees. Tell us in the comment section, what do you have your thermostat set on in the middle of winter? Because I think 65 is about as low as I want to go. So we got our heads together and came up with 6 other ways that we could hopefully lower our January utility bill. And they were?
Well, 1, turn off items when they're not in use. It's so easy to leave a light on here, a light on there, a computer, and even a TV set. We might have the TV on and we're both on our computers. And that's silly. True. So we're going to really watch that closely this coming month to see what we can do with that. The other item that I've been starting to do, we have fixtures in the house. They're kind of low. They're not up real high. And one of them has 3 light bulbs in it. Now we're already using LEDs, so they're not using that much. But I thought, well, how about we turn 2 of the bulbs so that they're not connected. We're using 1 out of the 3. Now they only use 10 watts, so we're not talking about a lot here. And there's one in the bathroom. It's the same way. So I thought, let's see if we can get on, with less lighting, and how will that do? Will it affect it?
Another thing that I had planned to do in January is make certain that I am bulk cooking. We have an electric oven, and I've actually looked at our utility company website in the back end of our account, and you can see your electric usage throughout the day. And when I turn that electric oven on, our electric usage shoots way up. So by bulk cooking, I'm going to have it on for a shorter period of time overall during the week. And when I do cook, I make sure that the oven is full.
Now, I might say that we are on an hourly metering plan. It's a special plan. Because of the electric car, that gives us some reduction in the electrical costs overnight. If you're not on that plan, then you're probably getting charged a flat rate, no matter what time of the day that you're using power. Now, the only problem with that plan is if you're using a lot of power during peak times, you're going to pay a lot more for it. So the idea is try to use your main items on off-peak times.
So that's the next tip. Use your utility company website. We have the ability, because we're on an hourly plan, to look ahead to the next 24-hour time period and find out when the lowest cost per kilowatt hour is for electricity. And we can plan to do things that actually use a lot of electricity during the hours when we are not paying as much per kilowatt hour. So use the tools that are available on your utility company website.
The next thing that we came up with, we do have one electric heater in the house. We're going to limit the use of that. And we have kerosene heaters. We actually don't sit in 65-degree temperatures in the family room. We heat it on up with a kerosene heater. They're very efficient. Well, we went over this with one of our Ameren engineers that came out and actually audited our house, and they suggested to continue using those, which surprised me actually. So we're still going to limit the use, so we're not using it as much as we have to.
So that's an example, a direct example from our personal budget as to how we frugalized that one area of our budget, our utility bill. We came up with 6 mini goals that we are actually going to implement consistently to see if that has an effect on our utility bill. Now you'll notice as you look at this goals worksheet that we have spaces for 6 areas of our budget that we are trying to make a difference in and trying to lower all the way down at the bottom. And this is critical. We always make sure that we put the date on there that we actually created this list of goals. And then the next space over, the time period until the next review. You don't have to wait 12 months in order to review it to see if it worked. In this case, we want to see, we kind of want to see instantly whether we're making a difference or whether we're not. So we're going to meet in 3 months and review this and say what worked, what didn't, and how are we going to change the goals based on what's working and what's not. But that is an example of how you take your budget, not just a regular budget, and you make it a frugal budget by making certain that every single goal that you have on that budget is frugalized and you are tracking exactly what you are doing to try to lower that area of your budget. We hope you found this super, super helpful. And we do want to remind you that next week we are going to do a video on how to set goals. You kind of got a little idea of it in the frugalizing of our budget, but we're going to talk to you about 3 specific kinds of goals that everyone should have, how we set those goals, and how to make sure that you actually meet those goals. So be sure that you are subscribed and you hit the bell to make sure that next Monday when we drop that video, you know about it right away and you can watch it. If you would like to know other frugal things that we do, we actually have a list of 11 daily frugal habits that we do every single day. And you'll find a link to that video over at the left-hand side.